fully recorded. Well, good afternoon, good evening, bienvenidos, one and all. You're here today for Cultivating Voices live poetry. It's our spring forward edition. Um, Here in the US, we're dealing with the clocks moving and or not moving, or us moving or not moving, depending on what's going on in your world. And of course, I also want to acknowledge that yesterday was International Women's Day, and I really feel like our program today is like the post-International Women's Day, like celebration and our new book showcase. We have an incredible, incredible new book showcase for you today. We're going to begin with Kashiana Singh, Megha Sood, Alison Prine, and we are looking for McCullagh, who we believe will be joining us shortly. Um, and all of you here live with us in the Zoom poetry studio, and those of you watching live on Facebook, and of course, the many of you the hundreds of you we know that will watch the recording. Thanks to Don Krieger and Kim Ports Parsons. Well, I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, for today. I am absolutely overjoyed. Before we get to today's program, though, I just want to I want to give a big shout out to last week. We opened up March, which is also here in the United States, um, Women's History Month. We opened up with an amazing, amazing, amazing anthology reading from Braving the Body. We had the editors, we had Nicole Callahan, Chenda Bao, and Jennifer Franklin, along with the publisher from Small Harbor Publishing, editor Alison Blevins shared her new collection. And if you didn't see the reading with the contributors to the anthology and Alison reading their poetry, I really want to encourage you to avail yourself, take advantage of our recordings that we have here. Again, curated so carefully and lovingly by Don Krieger, that you have those available to you on YouTube or on our Facebook page. Well, today, as I said, we have just an astounding, astounding new book showcase. And I've had my kind of eye on the prize, so to speak, of this reading for months. I've just been waiting in anticipation for March 9th, and here it is. So in honor of that, I took out my March for Women's Equality and Women's Lives pin that I got when I went to the march in Washington, D.C. on April 9th, 1989. There it is. There it is. I'm an antique dealer on the side, folks, so I sometimes like to march out my little objects that I've been collecting for years. Anyway, our new book showcase, fantastic. I want to remind you all and thank everybody for being here today, that the chat is live for you to show your love and appreciation for the readers, as well as for those of you live in the Zoom studio with us. You will see that you are going to be able to purchase books directly right from our chat. The links will be available to the poets presses, as well as to their websites. And of course, those will repopulate tomorrow on our Cultivating Voices Live Poetry Facebook meta page. And thank you so much to Kim Ports Parsons for that. Dutifully, without fail, every Monday, like the best clock in the world, like the best clock in the world. Thank you. Well, our first reader today is Kashiana Singh. And as we were coming out of the pandemic, I mean, we're kind of still, I don't really think we're post-pandemic. That's just my little editorial comment. And one of the absolute thrills of being able to come back, begin to come back in person was to start to meet all these folks that I had adored, admired, just marveled at in our little squares when they were on the screens, when they were on screen with us, whether a new book showcase or in one of our open mics. And I had the pleasure of that happening with Kashiana at AWP, the big writers conference that is coming up in 2 weeks, where I hope I'll see you again in person, of course. And sitting down to at Wednesday night poetry, the offsite reading at the big conference, um, and and there she was sitting right behind me. I turned around and it was just like love at second sight. Because of course the first sight was, here. So it was just a thrill and it was the warmest feeling. I had the best night just feeling just enveloped by all the folks. And I always remember that moment with you. I always remember that moment with you. So I am extremely excited to be able to welcome you back, of course, with your new book, your newest new book. And I'm just absolutely thrilled. So let me just share the more formal biography with all of you. Kashiana Singh is the author of most recently The Witching Hour, with a press that I absolutely also love, Glassliar Press, published in 2024. And Kashiana's full-length collection, Woman by the Door, was published in 2022 with Apprentice House Press. Kashiana's very iconic and well viewed TED Talk was dedicated to her life mantra of work as worship. And I can't highly recommend her TED Talk enough. Look it up. And Kashiana serves as the president of the North Carolina Poetry Society and as managing editor of Poets Reading the News. Her poetry ambassadorship is centered within her work at Poets Reading the News, North Carolina Poetry Society, and Matawai Collective, amongst many others. And I'm always most moved and impressed and humbled when we do have such poetry citizens, in the room with us. Kashian has led multiple panels on workshops on the topic of how food invokes and intersects with poetry. And it is just my absolute joy, pleasure to welcome you here back to Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. Thank you.
I need to not say anything for a second, just to take that in. And yes, Sandy, we know the reason we are all connected. Poetry connects us, but some of us have a special past life, soul, and Sandy, that's you. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, this is the most favorite place for many of us to bring our poetry, to come and receive poetry, to bring our new books. And it was obviously my utmost privilege and joy when, Kim, you reached out for the new book showcase featured reader. You mentioned both the books. I'm going to bring up the cover, and I am going to read from both. This is Woman by the Door by Apprentice House Press, and this is my most favorite cover of all. That's Witching Hour with Glassliar Press. So yes, we are coming up on the day after International Women's Day. We are also sitting in the center of a lot. It's not just clocks and time that is changing. It's also clocks and time that is in turmoil. And It's hard. It's been hard for many, many of us, but that's what poets do. We gather, we hold space, and we love each other, which is really what Cultivating Voices does. And that's why you're so adored. What I'm going to start with in honor of the International Women's Day is a poem from Woman by the Door, and it's called How a Woman Delivers Hope. Before I continue, though, can somebody tell me thumbs up? My voice is audible and clear. Okay, great. I have goosebumps whenever it happens every time we are in the same space, all of us. I love Megha, I love all of the Alison, all of the other poems that are the poets and the poems that we'll hear. So it just humbles me each time that I'm in the same presence, in the same room as these souls. How a Woman Delivers Hope. She embroiders the tundra with her hushed moans, breathless, as a tightness tugs and untugs within her. Hesitating, punctuating, she watches the air meet flesh at the outline of her being. As calm unsettles into rivulets flowing from inside of her, she pushes into beginnings and rises into endings. Still, patient, warrior, woman, giving birth. As the universe rises in Tumri, swirling slogans into light, she follows other women, their flaming, screaming, breathing, as her urging sinew and muscle shift. Pulsing her towards life, she renews herself with a sumptuous feast of goddess light. As it ebbs and flows, unfurling grit, reciting the new, reciting the new, reciting the new, as the midwife guides, she oozes eternity into the space between her thighs. Rising into a crescendo, the protests outside grow vacant with cries. She enunciates freedom for her body and offers an exile to that which was held within her. Pushing, brimming, pushing, bearing, delivering hope into a pregnant pause. And a glistening head now emerges. And a glistening head now emerges into the hands of her convulsing grace, into the fragility of a land that walks barefoot, into earth men that pedal her to goddesses, into monuments that stand on quicksands, into rivers sterile, for they are bleeding dry, into flags that flutter with septic infusions, into stuttering prayers of a laboring country. How a woman leaves behind drenched stories, sputtering from the stone of her wasted wombs. She delivers enough. She delivers enough, drenched, wet, unfolding hope. How a woman delivers hope. Thank you. I'll move on to Witching Hour, and that's my precious new baby. Just for context, and if you didn't make out, it's a pregnant woman with a little fetal inside. It's blue, of course, because it's the Witching Hour. But really, while this book was born out of my first year of my grandson's being born, my grandson being born, and my first year with him, really, it's not about the grandchild or the grandson. It's about the birthing life that is life, right? The birthing hour that is life, the witching hour that we live with and live in and live without. And the symbol that I draw upon throughout the book is Ouroboros. If you know, that's the symbol of if I have it, I'll show it to you. It's of the dragon eating its own tail. And as I was working with that symbol, which really is a symbol of fertility, beginning and ending, things that continue to go on. I'm trying to pull up the little picture of it so you can see it. The artist did a wonderful job. That's the little snake eating its own tail. And the funny story that I learned as I was researching that was it is the most popular tattoo symbol in the world. It's the most frequently used tattoo symbol in the world. So my first poem is actually a pre-poem before the book starts, and it's called All is Ouroboros. All is Ouroboros. Here is the arrival of dragonflies, hushed gathering of summer. Here is another omitted temple, yoking the past and the present. Here stands a lamppost, witness to careful streets. Here is a door almost wide open, bookmarked with remembering. Here is the eye of a dense storm, clenching tight her wilding teeth. Here is yet another history book, an unflinching experiment in lies. Here stands a brooding intersection, curved into hunched recollection. Here are these raging oceans, their hum arriving in waves. Here is my silver-chested river, speed a gesture of its aliveness. Here is a seven-spotted ladybug. Here is a seven-spotted ladybug, a tender talisman of sacred silence. Here is a feathered ball of hope. Spasm song is this sparrow, paraphernalia of ordinary fungi, manifesting the dirt, an unfazed spell of full moon in the toiling of an earthworm, slime of our skin, shimmer of epochs tunnel into earth. Let one thing stay clear. Let one thing stay clear as the world catalogues amnesia and names, always names. Earth itself is named. Call it blue marble, pale blue dot, earth rise. Galaxies are all undercurrents of our leached blood. Wastelands, 70 families of muted ozines. All is Ouroboros. I'm going to change the tone a little bit. And as I said, a lot of these poems are how-to poems. And I'll read a few titles, which will give you a flavor of what I'm trying to do here. But it says, How to Love Blueberries Like a 7-month-old, How to Destroy a Sunny Side Up Like an 8-month-old, How to Write a Process for Music Like a 3-month-old, How to Pray Like a 1-year-old, How to Be Gentle to My Son in the Past, How to Eat a Mango Like a 9-month-old, and so on and so forth. And of course, these are just metaphors for the larger process of life. So what I'm going to read is one of the how-to poems, and it's called How to Wear Gingham Shirts Like a 10-month-old. And the only context you need to know is my husband, which is this little baby's granddad, is always teased for being in these checkered gingham shirts all the time. How to wear gingham shirts like a 10-month-old. It is all about habits. Your grandpa has worn checks forever, his pa too. Folding laundry, I come across a fluorescent yellow and ink blue collared shirt. Gazing at the blueberry stain, I vacantly rub a wet Q-tip over it. The chest pocket stiff, a perfect square. The cloth fits into my palm. Broad cuffs unbuttoned, indulging time as clothespin, whole diapers, air drying. Procrastination settles, holding on to this penny-sized moment while laundry waits on closet shelves. Aching singularity of grid lines on crisp linen and awkwardness of unwritten dress codes, gingham is now a metaphor for unfinished stencils of our ancestors. Gingham is now a metaphor for unfinished stencils of our ancestors, a crushed cloth of stories. Creases flatten as an iron moves up and down and up and down, a wrinkle light beneath my forgetful fingers, hours draped into shirts after folded shirts, steam drifting upwards into question marks. And I end most of the poems in this collection with not necessarily haiku, because I feel very afraid of the purists challenging my haikus, but they do end in little micro poems at the end. So this one ends with 3. It says, my demons vanish into maelstorms, unsettled weather. Light travels at 299,792,458 meters per second. Light travels at 299,792,458 meters per second. My fertile darkness. In the southern hemisphere, thick moths fall in thousands upon my parents' lawn. In the southern hemisphere, thick moths fall in thousands upon my parents' lawn. How to wear gingham shirts like a 10-month-old. How are we doing on time, Sandy and Kim?
Okay. Probably a couple more.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going. I have to do an...
Oh.
I got muted by mistake. We have to do an Ars Poetica. So this poem is called I Write Poetry Because. I write poetry because it makes me feel obnoxious, dares me to be in awe of my ubiquitous self, carve puns, a pollination of verbs with breath. Poetry keeps me out of crowded rooms, places I no longer wish to inhabit. A bhakti trembles inside chosen words. Perched at the edge of my mottled tongue, settling, unsettling like pollen, the rat and its wriggling night, a cadaver shrugged. Awake from beneath a weighted cover, a quarrelsome clang of onomatopoeia. As we all know, the onomatopoeia is these words that sound like the hiss of the snake or the honk of a car. Awake from beneath a weighted cover, a quarrelsome clang of onomatopoeia knocks at my opaque amygdala. Stubbornly playing Ouija and amyloid build up, perpetual as impatience, spectre on watch, editing pangs, sullen as my putrid coffee. White space, white hair, and bespectacled eyes make decent bed partners. White hair, white space, and bespectacled eyes make decent bed partners. The landing thud of hormones drown orgasmic howls. Cities bury their faces in thicket of wastes, fallowed ground, silvered hair, reclaiming calligraphed ticks of earth. Scolding Maina song, a priestess performs arti even at broken altars. Arti is the act of performing prayer at an altar. Scolding Maina song, a priestess performs arti even at broken altars. That was I Write Poetry Because. I'm going to go to the last poem in the book, and this one is in honor of all the wars and all the places and all the losses and all the mothers and all the women that have to visit a funeral pyre. And it's titled Funeral Pyre, and it's a ghazal poem. Funeral pyre. Typically, there be no right or wrong. Truth is merely recast at the funeral pyre. The end of childhood ends everything. No time to be child before the funeral pyre. Practice makes perfect, they said. War begets wars, gasps the funeral pyre. Teachers are students at feet of mother. She howls into the rain at their funeral pyre. Atma and Paramatma in a churning fire, garlands of skulls crowd the funeral pyre. Atma is the soul and Paramatma is the super soul. Atma and Paramatma in a churning fire, garlands of skulls crowd the funeral pyre. Sculpting unbeing into being of prayers, deities be damned inside a funeral pyre. Breath inside burial after birth is born. Breath inside burial after birth is born, of regrets still born after the funeral pyre. Cradling the planet on a platter of stars, cradling the planet on a platter of stars, this fevered mortal arrives at funeral pyres. Names are anointed with soft tongues. Let us bury them within our funeral pyre. Funeral pyre. I'll pause there, Sandy, and
Thank
hand over
you.
back
Thank
to you.
you. That is Kashiana Singh, everyone, reading from two new collections, The Witching Hour from Glassliar Press and Woman by the Door from Apprentice House Press. You know, every time I see you read, I am like forever reminded of the true power of your voice. I mean, I feel like you bring the full force of your being into your poems when you read them. It's how I experience them. It's uh, not everyone reads that way or shares that way. And it is it is electrifying. It wakes me up to poetry in a completely new way when I hear you. And it's the poems themselves as well, but I just that combination of how you bring the poem, of how you let's go back to your first poem, how you deliver the poem, how you birth the poem,
For the poem.
how you birth the poem with your voice, uh, and then the poem itself, the combination. Uh, I'm left speechless always.
Thank you.
Truly, truly am.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Sandy.
thank you, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank
today. Folks, of course, the links are in the chat. Or if you can buy one, two, thousands of books today, if you have the resources, do it.
you.
The world needs our poetry as much as we need the world. It's true. So support everyone as you can. Thank you. And I'm gonna see you in a couple weeks.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, I am So happy to be introducing our next reader, Cáit O'Neill McCullagh. And we usually go by the order of the faces on the poster. Um, but Scotland. Oh, Scotland, that weather in Scotland. It's briny. It's it does its work, doesn't it? So there was a power outage, hence a little trickster energy, hence a slight delay. All is well. All is well. Koch is here with us. All is well. This reading, as I was saying before, Koch, is, it's our post International Women's Day reading. And I, the four of you reading today, I have the most vivid memories of encountering each of you. And with you, I believe it was Lime Square Poets where I heard you first. It might have been Not the Time to Be Silent. I can't remember if it had switched over to Lime Square yet. It was probably Not the Time to Be Silent, actually. And you were not silent. That's for sure. That is for sure. And when I heard your poetry for the first time, similarly but differently than Kashiana, I do feel like I was taken to a completely new place in how I was experiencing a poem. I mean, and it has never wavered every time I have the opportunity to hear you read your extraordinary poetry. I I feel more and more like I understand what poetry exists for. Like that's kind of what happens to me when I hear you. So I can't I can't express enough how much it means that I get to hear you once again today. So the formal biography now. Cáit O'Neill McCullagh writes at home in Scotland, and her debut pamphlet, The Songs I Sing Are Sisters, a collaboration with Sinead McCullagh, another dear beloved human to us here at Cultivating Voices, won the Dreich Classic Chapbook Competition Award in 2022. And of course, I just got chills thinking about that reading. And it also won the Saboteur Award in 2023. Well, we are so fortunate today to be able to be celebrating and hearing from her first full-length collection, The Bone Folder, and which was published by Drunk Muse Press, another one of my favorite presses in the world, truly, in Scotland. It was published in July of 2024 and has been commended as announcing a bold and visionary writer who crafts the heartwood of language into luminous work that sings with life. Every single one of those words is absolutely true. Koch has been nominated for a Pushcart International Poetry Prize this year, and Koch outruns a cancer diagnosis in 2022 and is working on her second collection. And I want to also just say that um, last week, our one of our featured readers, she is also um, running with her diagnosis, a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I want to say how inspiring and how moving and how you have held yourself and shared your journey with the poets of the world. Not everyone would choose to do that. And I think it's made a tremendous difference, and I just want to acknowledge that. And I I love you. I love your poetry, and let's hear it.
Andy, I love you. I'm so sorry to give my dear Cultivating Voices live poetry friends such kittens this evening. But yes, we just I live rurally in the Highlands of Scotland, and it's been very unusual. But of course, today, and only for like an hour, but it's been the crucial time. So anyway, thank you so much for this opportunity to come and to share with you. Wonderful to hear you, Kashiana, before I read, and to hear a little of your own poetry. I'm so sorry that I didn't get the opportunity to hear it all, but beautiful to be here with you and with my fellow readers, and to have this opportunity to share from the Bone folder, which was born really out of you know, I mean, Michael Longley, the poet, the Irish poet, who sadly died this year. He he said, when asked where do poems come from, that he had no real answer for that, and that's true. I think for all of us who write, something is given, but sometimes in moments that are particular. And the Bone folder was born out of an experience in. On the 24th of February 2022, which is a significant date. No one remembers the weather, but that was the day that Putin invaded Ukraine, and also the day that I found myself being scanned and diagnosed for cancer. And as on the screens around me in the hospital, Kiev and all of that country's devastation was appearing before us, I was also seeing my own body being kaleidoscoped through MRI scans and CT scans. And in a strange and important way, in my own personal moment of extreme challenge, I was also being called to empathy. And I think I really want to say to you that this collection was born out of what Roger Robinson says to us about poetry, that it is a tool for empathy and an opportunity to extend our understanding beyond our own imagination to others, and in our own difficulties to also appreciate the difficulties of those given to us around the world. So I'm going to read to you a couple of poems which really signify that experience, that duality and empathy moment. And these are both from the collection. The first poem is Little Stabs. I need to tell you that there is a word in this poem, sashiko, which comes from Japanese, and it is a word for describing the making beautiful of a mend of worn or torn cloth. Of course, in Japan, no mending happens without ornamentation and decoration. And the term literally means little stabs. Little stabs. My surgeon says she will make of me sashiko. Use little stabs and patch the worn cloth of my belly with tender decoration. She traces a line, sternum into the softness of me. It is, I imagine, a soothe for a sleepless child. Her finger crescents my navel, preserves the umbilicus as if it is needed for another nativity. In truth, she will birth from me 3 fruits, each overripe and too rich for this body. Together, we know she cannot simply repair wind-fallen flesh, but must burnish it with thread honeyed from apple blossom, returning me golden. The next poem is a poem that's born, like quite a number of the poems in the collection, out of the experience of fragmentation and partiality in viewing the experiences of people in Ukraine. When I was in hospital, these poems were written while I was in the hospital, on screens, in newspaper reports, many of them nameless to me. hearing only their words in translation or seeing images. And a particular image that struck me throughout that week was the appearance of people crossing out of their homes and the rubble of homes usually, and also across rivers where bridges had been destroyed, and often the most elderly and the youngest in those communities, the most vulnerable, crossing last, and singularly in many cases. In Erpen, the bridge has laid down, drenched her dragon throat, heifer meek, offered her neck to the bladed weight of war. Through a rip of ribs, a zikashka, story, ibis wader, ebb waltzer. She crosses carcass, treads barricades of beast, toils to lift her tenderness. Uncentered, I hold my hollowed belly close, wholly feared it will sunder should she drift. Not even the melt print of a fallen flake, her body more snow than flesh, more all her clothes worn together, all held against this pickling wind. It brines her bones, my tears. The thin of screen between us, now galaxy vast. I wish her wings, the freedom of the whole world's sky. In this experience of illness and also of reflecting into the wider world, I was also brought to reflection through time. I had a lot of time in recoveries, in treatment, and my beloved, my dear husband, prepared for me photographs and records of my family and mementos and all those things through which a family might also forget its story, so that I had items for reflection. And it brought me to thinking about the centenary of an experience my own family lived through, the Civil War in Ireland, and all the outcome of that, including the displacement and dispersal of people in my own story into diaspora. There's many migrations, which are so much our human story, for we're all migrants. And so the next couple of poems I want to share with you are something out of that personal experience, particularly the way in which my parents lived this long outpouring of the Civil War, which had been part of their own parents' lives. And for my parents, the story of their migrations. At Loch Curran, 1965. Triuntwined, my mother sits between sisters, one born for each season, bar the harvest. Plait of arms tucked under legs, folding themselves petticoat neat. Over one, under one, weave, weave. They are a basketry of whispers, creel secret, deep. My father makes to catch them. Beholden, he's shuttered the circling of a lens, snapped just as their laughter escapes. They have become 1,000 florets of Papa's puff, dandelions. Birds sing in these smiles. My mother, iris to iris with the camera, my father, her eyes always on us. Looking closer, I turn the frame, deflect lights raking, and see it's not my daddy, nor a future of me in her eyes. It is history's hurtle towards her as she plunges into all she's already kenned, everything that will take her from that moment, those sisters. My parents, I looked at many photographs of them through this time. I have had them for years, photographs of their youngness, And they looked like film stars, you know. It was a time of bouffant hairstyles and silk dresses and brill cream hair. Um, and I just wanted somehow to honor and and give back a sense of knowing them before they knew me, before we knew each other, um, and something of the journey that they made in order then that our family could become possible. Irish, the Roundhouse, Camden, 1965. Picture my parents staring from a crowd of faces, drift matter washed up from the small sea between destitution and diaspora, uncertain in all their young beauty. My mother, her marigold hair coiled like spooled dulse, for she has still to unlearn the Atlantic, the salt of her parents' dailiness, casual rotations of the Angelus and soda loaves. My father, brill cream, sleek and sweet, handsome. He has yet to learn the meek lowering of his neck, an abattoir calf, muted to the mauling of his Irishness, never his own name in the squall. Paddy, Mick, scattering him, winnowed chaff. But tonight they dance full giddy miracles. Tomorrow and every evening after, he will peel the potatoes she prepares for him, turn each perfect planet upon his fork, let their heavy skins and the spoils of each day spiral from him. He'll dip these treasures in unction of butter, gold, panned from a dish, printed with the prettiness of daisies. All their meadowed sweetness, my mother anointing him. I mentioned earlier my beloved, my own darling, and I think for many poets, you know, this social activity carried out often in a solitary way, this activity of writing, of communicating in some ways to the imagined beloveds, those who will read or hear our poems, needs nurturing, and we do need people who love us. And I'm very grateful that I have that person. And shamelessly, because it's only just not February, I want to share with you a love poem from the Bone Folder. In fact, I would say all of the poems are love poems in some way, but this very specifically from my own dear. The Blue Note. Hopeful for the summer that you bring, I take the heat of your hand to my neck, to my mouth. I lift the blood-warm calf's milk, cupped from a can. And in the tides before us, sylvan drifts to dawn. I lean into the lean legs of you to listen as you tell it to me. That music of the blue note, the flattened curve of grief, it keens at our hearts, and you say it is there in the wail of blind Willie Johnson, or when Ella tilts the chin, lifts open her eyes to sing. Ella looking to Louis, your eyes on me, and they are love singing the nearness of you. I feel it too, I whisper. Just this brief trespass of words, and you, and the milk, sweet on my lips. In the exploration of my own experience of coming to belonging and form of healing, I'm very fortunate that I live in an extremely beautiful part of the world. We have before us a firth, a small part of the ocean, and behind us forest and mossland, and many, many, many more than human companions including extraordinary bird life. And all of this bird life brings with it, in this culture, a lore, a folklore storying. It's really, it's a big thing for a poet to write another curlew poem. But in this poem, I suppose I wanted to say something about the experience of what my own challenges have brought, and also to bring something of that through the landscape around me, which is leaning in its healing to me, and the birds that bring that too. The curlew in Irish and in Highland Scottish tradition is a bird that's, the cry is said to be the cry of a mother calling for her lost child, and also in a mirror to that, a child calling for its mother. Curlew, and that your heart would not fill a thimble when I mind on it, my own heart, it is the weakness in me. Oh, curlew, wee ration of sky, your song ululates the bog, dip, soar, a breath caught. I dreamed you in days before, when time had not run us out, my mothering still within me. O dainty hazelnut, I spread this ache for you, milk sweet, blood warm unborn, like butter on this less than skin between us. Between us, like butter on this less than skin, you, milk sweet, blood warm, unborn. Oh, dainty hazelnut, I spread this ache for my mothering still within me. When time had not run us out, I dreamed you in days before. Dip, soar, a breath caught, your song ululates the bog. Oh, curlew, wee ration of sky, it is the weakness in me when I mind on it, my own heart, and that your heart would not fill a thimble. So I'm hoping I'm still okay for time. I have one more poem. Would that be okay? Would be okay? Okay. So this final poem that I want to share is a poem that I wrote after an evening in our village hall. You know, we have a community cinema initiative. We're really out in the countryside. We don't have a cinema, but we show films on a screen, a projector in a hall, which is often very, very cold, but warmed by company and conviviality and often good food. And one night together we watched the film Fadia's Tree. It's a beautiful film about Fadia Lubani, a woman who lives in a refugee camp in Lebanon. And it is about the search for belonging. Fadia sends the filmmaker on a mission to find a mulberry, which marks the site of her grandfather's house in Sassa, which is across the border from her present home. We have woodlands too, and they are a place of nurture and great healing for our community. So this is to somehow say something about how if we live in a place we love and we are loved in the place we live, and we find that it can help us to understand the search of other people in our world for that home and sense of belonging. Blaeberries. Spring still sharp, but the calm has sent out her heralds, and we are sheltered from that white water whale at Black Gorge. In the village hall with Jill and Natalie, I dip flatbread into zaffer oil, spoon the simple mothering of hummus to my mouth, and we watch Fadia's Tree, how she yearns for her grandfather's mulberry in Sassa. We believe it too, that the roots will remember her, even though we know she's never seen them, that a border refuses her belonging, that her children cannot feel the purpling fruit decorate their fingers. And we can hardly bear it, saying, we all wake with Gaza now. It's not the same at all, but like a tree rehung with windfall to tempt waxwings in winter, my body is broken. Later, kissing farewells at the woodland gate, beneath sycamores, giant sentinels of their own wisdom, I look to the banks of the rotten rock path where Anna, who recalls her childhood in Norway better each day, has planted blaeberries, small and nurture needful, like the bairns now untwining from distracted parents, adult blethers, to lie amid the soft shelter of this wise friend's gift, a minding of her even when she might forget herself. I love it for them, the children, living in this possible moment, in the friendship of berries. Thank you.
I'm trying to breathe. I'm just trying to breathe. I'm just trying to breathe these poems in. These poems, they belong with us the way breath belongs with us, and we belong with breath. And hearing you read again hearing you read again today from the Bone folder, I was just very, very moved by how your poems reach me like fierce, fierce dreams. Fierce, fierce dreams. Um, they are of the body of the world and the world of the body together. And showing us how that belongs together as a story, the story of every single one of our lives across generations and across time. Um, and to do all that in 15 minutes, to do all that in 15 minutes. What a tremendous, tremendous gift. Thank you, Koch. I mean, you're one of the people in the world that I want to meet more than anybody. So I might come knocking on your door one day. I hope it happens. Come on, come on. Folks, the book is The Bone Folder from Drunk Muse Press. And again, the work that the press does, the way that it brings poetry to raise consciousness, and of of what is going on in the world. I have so much respect for that press. I have so much respect for that press. So, and I heard your narratives coming through loud and clear. And it's very clear why you're with such an extraordinary press in Drunk Muse. I love them. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Maybe less stormy. Well, folks, I always try to explain and say, yeah, it's going to be an amazing reading. And I try to prepare everybody and I try to prepare myself and I fail miserably at it. And, I'm about to fail miserably again. And by trying to explain what you're about to hear when you're listening to Megha Sood. Okay, my beautiful story of meeting Megha was just last year. A beautiful meeting when I was at the New York Poetry Festival and I turned around and there she was. I was like, oh my gosh. And we have this beautiful picture of us, and I loved that moment because I felt like it was such a hot day. Do you remember? It was like we were sweltering. I mean, just dripping. It was like extraordinarily humid. And yeah, I felt like so awash in the love of like meeting you and just being in your presence. So thank you for that beautiful moment in my life. Thank you for that beautiful moment in my life, along with the beautiful moments in my life when I've had the extraordinary pleasure and honor to hear your work.
Well, thank you.
Everybody today, fierce,
Yeah.
fierce women, fierce. fierce. Oh my gosh. In very prismatic ways, very differently. And we need all of it.
Yeah,
All of it.
that is
All
very true.
right. Yep. So, Megha Sood, here is your formal biography that we have to share with our audience. Megha Sood is an award-winning Asian American author, poet, editor, and literary activist from New Jersey. Literary partner with Life in Quarantine at Stanford University. Her 4 poetry collections include the award-winning My Body Lives Like a Threat from Flower Song Press. And of course, we heard you read from that collection here on Cultivating Voices. My Body is Not an Apology from Finishing Line Press. We also heard poems from that extraordinary collection. And Language of the Wound is Love, the newest collection from Flower Song Press. She has received support from Vona, one of my favorite groups in the world, Penn Women, the Dodge Foundation, Kundaman, and Martha's Vineyard Writing Institute. Her 900 plus works have been featured in the Poetry Society of New York, Ms. Magazine, the New York Poetry laureates, probably, I'm going to say. I'm not sure what the L is there. Penn Magazine, PBS, which is public broadcasting here in the United States, a national group, as just extraordinarily vast. Her poems and co-edited anthology, The Medusa Project, have been selected to be sent to the moon in 2025. Okay, folks, to the moon in collaboration with NASA Link. Well, let us applaud that. Let us applaud probably our first poet that today has said their poems are going to the moon. And may more poems and poets follow you and your poems to the moon. Well,
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's such a like as Kashiana said, it's like always humbling to be part of this group, and it's like hearing all these poets before me. It's like it's filling me up with so much of love and beauty. I was like, it was more than to be like a listener than to be a reader. I'm like I could have like just like let go of myself and listen to this beautiful because you're more relaxed to be very honest when you're just listening. But it's beautiful, beautiful. And thanks to you and thanks to Kim for making this happen. And before taking any more time, I just want to tell you that this is my 4th collection of poetry, as Sandy mentioned, and it's called Language of the Wound is Love. And it's currently open for pre-order by Flower Song Press. And they also did the debut full-length collection in 2022. And before I start reading, I just want to give you a brief description of how the title came into existence. So I strongly feel that all the the things which are like inflicted on the humanity, be it like all the wounds which is inflicted on humanity, be it by gender and sexual based discrimination, violence against women, the migration and displacement crisis, and the isolation that we felt during pandemic, or any kind of toxic political behavior of the world. It's like all the wounds which are inflicted on the humanity, it needs healing, and it needs healing through love and compassion. And I strongly believe, and it's been proven thus far, that poetry is a tool which like stimulate empathy, as we have like and Catch mentioned it, and it's true. And empathy is necessary for achieving social justice, and poetry is one of the tools that stimulates the empathy. So we need poets, we need poetry, not only to make us aware of what's happening outside, but also to make us aware that what basically a human being means. It doesn't mean only when you cry, when you get hurt. It means that you also stand up for unspoken and unheard in your life, right? People who can't stand up for themselves. So that's the mission in my poetry, in my life. And I'm always thankful for people like you, Kashiana, and all the other people around here, which they render this message that what poetry and its, thing can bring us together, and it acts as bridges. So I'm gonna start reading before taking without taking any more time. The first poem is the pre-poem, and it opens the collection, and it's called Poem and It's Hunger. Do you ever realize how the body reclaims itself, like the dried scar from its time of birth? You only realize its presence when you see it. Hunger reeks from your soul, and like water from a mother's hair wrung after a bath, it brings out scented memories of something pure and sublime. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger and emerge stripped naked of our emotions. There's always a death standing at the end of the sentence. Not every enjambment gives meaning. Some lines are meant to be left orphaned, like the day they found an old crumpled picture of my bombed city in my wallet. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger, like a night feverishly trying to find its salvation in the open mouth of the bloody dawn. Thank you. The next is called The Beautiful Death Around Us, and it's based on the invasive species, the lanternfly, which emerged in the summer of 2022 in the eastern part of the United States. The beautiful death around us. I have been taught by my granny to always help an animal in need, even an insect, a monarch with broken wings fluttering in the shining mud, shining bravely in the precipice of the city, stopping us in our tracks. I hold it gently in the center of my tender palms like an infant, cuddling its existence with all my warmth and tends to its broken wings till it can fly. One day, a small-breasted warbler crashed against the blinding windows of my high-rise and fell on the balcony. Death is a shining thing. It draws you in like a Pied Piper, a shining penny half covered in a roll of hay. I tend to its broken wings and wait feverishly for it to open its eyes. Numerous tales of kindness and humility come back to me, rushing, when sometimes kindness becomes a stranger to me. These days are strange. The year is strange. Death and dying have been given a new name. The normal has been anointed again. And yet again, there's an invasive species as beautiful as dream in the thicket of the night, with its spotted wings and fiery abdomen, a spotted lanternfly. And the message that it brings for us is when you see it, kill it. What a terrible act of survival. It's either them or us. The existence is beautiful and yet so devastating. Sometimes I feel how much kindness is left inside this withering soul of mine that can kill a living being with all my might. And the next one is called They Have Plans for Us. And this is in honor of the International Women's Day and the Women History Month. And it's this poem was written out of rage. So they have plans for us. It's based on the complete abortion ban, which is mentioned in the Project 2025 manifesto. They have plans for us. Oh, yes, they have plans for us. Oh, yes, the one that they have hammered down to the last line, the manifesto, word after word, line after line, pages after pages, mapping the curves of our bodies, silhouettes of our desires, dipped in their thick black inks of subjugation. Yes, they have plans for us, boxing all the mortal things, bejeweled with life plans, trinkets, and bling, underlining their adoration for us, their unfettered love, passion, their soft, caring being. Yes, they have plans for us, stripping bare our tongues with hands tied at our backs, wounds scraped clean, as pristine, as demure as they want us to be, with their stories of success etched in our spines for kingdoms to come. Yes, They have plans for us to carry the love of incest and rape in our womb, licking our wounds clean but never saying a word, bringing the shunned love to our full breast, letting it down a bit, warmly and gently nursing it every day, recounting the days like a horror story on reels. Yes, they have plans for us, till our thick blood trickles down the murky lanes of a dark, empty parking slot. Lot for their sheer pleasure, a spangled future. Yes, they have plans for us, for guarding every inch, every iota of our existence, having a lien to our soul, a perfect story of a mother with rounded bellies, making it complete, making it whole. Yes, they have plans for us to get on our knees, to say our prayer for exalted gods in heaven, to utter words of salvation and redemption. Yes, they have plans for us to carry the blood stories in our sacred womb and not to utter a single word, to hold the bitter truth on the edge of our teeth while licking razor blades without spilling a word. Yes, they have plans for us, freeing us from all this self-destruction our simple minds can't conceive, taking us to yet another hell that they have brilliantly mapped out for us. Thank you. So the next, as I said about empathy and compassion, the next short poem is a request for all of us. A bridge needs to be built. Not every thought in my heart. It takes 1,000 steps in my heart to take one little step towards you. Not every morning brightens my soul. Not every rain washes my sins. I have knelt on so many pews seeking absolution. Not every prayer absolves my sins. Not every scar sings songs of my glory. Not every wrinkle is chiseled with experience. I am a fleck of mortality riding the wings of time. Not every moment of history carves me. Not every sin I commit defines me. Not every blank space in my heart can be filled. Not every thought of mine can be aligned. But every day in me, I find myself a bridge that needs to be built, a dark corner that needs to be lit. The next is called A Taste of Home. Thank you so much. The next is called Taste of Home, and this poem has been written out of my love for mangoes. So Kashiana, shout out to you for writing poems about mango. That's our favorite fruit. And we as an Indians and a first generation immigrant knows how when the summer comes and we long for that taste of the pulp and slithering and everything which goes with mango. So it's called Taste of Home. I ransacked my memories only to come empty-handed. The immigrant in me, for this traveler, the search never ends. I look everywhere for some across the borders, tightly stuffed within the folds of my other perfumed clothes, carrying the smell of home in my suitcases, crossing the invisible lines with me, the almost familiar fragrance, something that no longer stayed with me, yet never leaves me. Like a musk deer always in search, I looked for it everywhere except inside me. The burden of responsibility tugged along with my hyphenated identity, and I kept dangling between the two, akin to limbo, trying to stay true to either one of them, only to get lost in translation every time. I open my mouth and my tongue turns and twists to fit the cookie cutter rules of this new world. Like a dandelion, I'm swayed by the winds, doused by the fragrance of opportunities and by something good that lies beneath the dearth of hope that the new sun brings. The sky welcomes everyone with its blue kindness. With hands laced with henna and turmeric tainted fingers, I try to carve my own identity. I dig my teeth deeper into the fresh, juicy pulp of mangoes each summer, trying to masticate the similarities in their pith. Every mouthful of yellow nectar I gulp ends in disappointment, leaving a metallic taste of longing inside me. It turns into a shade of loneliness each time, every time. The dissimilarities overpower the experience, and I've been left longing for home. What exactly is the taste of home? Who could tell? I stopped at every place that bears the resemblance of home, only to move to the next one. They say, I'm a pessimist, still looking for love more than I deserve, still looking for a home when there is none. Thank you. I have three more poems. The next one is called Deciphering the Madness. And this poem was I wrote during the pandemic, and it was like commissioned by WNYC Studio, and they aired it on the National Poetry Month. And it talks about the feeling which we have, like living in pandemic and living our own realities in our islands of isolation. Deciphering the Madness. I ask the night feverishly as it rests on the caligenous back of time, like a thick rope going through the wide open mouth of a blind wall, rubbing against it, leaving marks on its existence, like a divine mark on the forehead after kneeling before the exalted gods for countless times. I ask myself, is it ever going to be all right again? Thinking, as I take a second glance at the empty streets of my house, longing for the clickety clack of the footsteps warming its thick cobbled skin. There's a method to this madness that I used to discover every morning, looking outside my window, counting hurried whispers of crowds as they move towards the station like a mass exodus. Now I long for those sights that I normally abhorred, the state of the normalcy of what it was before, as the light sheepishly makes its way through thin wooden slats of my bedroom window. Is it ever going to be all right again? The pinging sound of the garbage truck backing up in an alley, soft paws scratching as they dig dirt in the almost bald spot of the park, joggers cladded in sweaty bodies, heaving to take in another sliver of breath. Is it ever going to be all right again? I look at puny finches weaving a nest in the oak outside my apartment as they decipher this reigning madness, carefree, weaving a home for their future self. I say to myself, it is indeed going to be all right again. The next one is called Trails of Kindness, and it was published in the Pen Women magazine, and it was also part of a public exhibit in Jersey City. Trails of Kindness. I count the years as I walk past the trees lining my courtyard, counting them one by one neatly on my soft, supple fingers. The mighty oak has weathered worse and still nests sparrows. The jasmine tree, whose flower-laden shoots smile through their fragrant arms, waves me goodbyes. Their warm presence deeply carried by the northern winds. Even with a slight opening in my kitchen window, they can make their presence felt. What more is to this life than to count joys and blessings in the crawling lines of my mint plant that is growing and spilling joys in all directions, The new tender leaves of basil, twinkling and shining through the sliver of the sunlight. Warm, supple hands of my succulents holding water as kindness in their thick leaves remind me of the frail hands of my granny, combing my hair and making trails of kindness, reminding me always that kindness is a necessary gesture of acceptance, like the puny sapling breaking through the crumbling earth as it finds hope and grows through pain. I'm going to close my reading with a poem called Brotherhood. And this is the central, like the underlying emotion of my book when I talked about it, that how the feeling of brotherhood, the empathy and the compassion, and that what we need when the whole world is seeped with all sorts of miseries. And it starts with an epigraph by Martin Luther King Jr. We must live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Martin Luther King Jr. Brotherhood. We are all broken, crumbled, rounded again, made from the same clay, caked and baked in the same unforgiving oven. We all have cracks in us from where the light gets in, frayed at the border, pulling apart at the seams, peeling off and breaking down into pieces in all our miseries. We are all the same, living under the same ashen, cloudless sky and blue moon in its reverie, breathing the same air, swooning over the same melody of the souls, crooning our necks to the same broken chords. In unison we roll. We all are the same, laughing and cracking up with welled up eyes and bruises we endure, getting stabbed by the same knife, blooded by the same bullet. Caste, creed, or religion doesn't seem to discriminate or beg to differ. We are all the same heartbeat, sliced and splintered into million pieces, and the same God we worship, holding books with different verses. We all are the same from within, laughing at our scars with abject profundity. We are brothers and sisters, and together we shall live. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
The fierceness, here's the thing, when I hear you read, I want to just stand up. I want to stand up because again, I feel like, yes, things are possible. Things are possible. Like we must be with each other. We must hear each other. We must love each other. We must walk the fires with each other. And I feel the force of that, and it is a powerful, powerful life force that your poems bring. So I always I don't forget, and I'm always reminded at the same time, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is why I need poetry. I hear your poems, I'm like, yes. The sky welcomes everyone. What a line. And also, right from the beginning, we all enter a poem knowing it's hunger. We all enter a poem knowing it's hunger. Thank you so much for the incredibly powerful feast of your poetry today, Megha. And I look forward to see you soon and read more poems. I love that. I love that.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
And to the moon. To the moon.
Yeah, it just landed on March 2nd and
I
March
just
6th. Yeah. So both the rocket missions, it just landed on, one of them landed on 2nd and one of them on 6th. So yeah,
I
I'm
I am.
I'm giddy with happiness.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Folks, today we have been given the extraordinary gift of these four poets. And we're about to hear from Alison Prine. And we're going to go over a little bit and you're not going to want to miss a minute of what's left. I I first heard Allison on a Headmistress Press. It was probably an open mic even. And the very first time I heard you read, uh, I was just dumbstruck. I just was completely taken by your work. I got your book immediately, and then I read it in my Sealy Challenge in August. And I remember talking to people after, of course, you remember I wrote little mini reviews. Um, but I also spoke to people and I said, this to me is a book, like a lyrical book, unlike anything I'd read, like ever. And I read a lot of poetry. There is such there is such a powerful undercurrent of there's a mystery and a haunt that is coursing through this book, and yet it is, to me, it is something that is like bringing light to me at the same time. And I wish I could describe the book. I really wish I could describe it, but I find it to be like one of the most extraordinary explorations and journeys I've had with a book of poetry in a very, very long time. I love this book, Loss and its Antonym. Before I read Allison's biography, though, I have to highlight the fact that Allison has just become a lesbian trading card. Um, Thanks to Mary Miriam, who also is a trading card. And it's so fun. It's so cool. Thank you to Headmistress Press for everything they do. And thank you to Headmistress Press for bringing, your book to all of us. And we're going to get to hear from that very shortly. And I want to say also, Allison is humble. Allison provides like the shortest formal biography, but her poetry will speak volumes beyond the humility that you're about to hear. Alison Prine's latest collection of poems, Loss and its Antonym from Headmistress Press 2024, won the 2023 Sappho Prize in Poetry. Her debut poetry collection, Steel, was from Cider Press Review in 2016 and was named a finalist for the 2017 Vermont Book Award. Her poems have appeared in Plowshares, the Virginia Quarterly Review, 5 Points, Harvard Review, Prairie Schooner, and others. She lives and works in Burlington, Vermont. And thank my lucky stars that you do what you do, that you up there in Vermont. Thank you, universe. Everybody, Alison Prine.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for that very beautiful, warm introduction and for creating this gorgeous forum for us to come together. I'm really honored to have been invited and to sit and listen to these beautiful, acclaimed poets share their work. It's really been a stunning afternoon. So yes, I'm reading from Loss and its Antonym, and I am grateful to Headmistress Press for bringing it into the world. As its title suggests, this collection deals a lot with loss. My mother was killed in a car accident when I was a child, and that grief echoes through much of this collection. I'm going to start with a poem for her, which is sort of a collage of maybe smaller poems, and it's called Strayed. Peonies in bloom remind a woman of the best sex of her life. At night, I cut blossoms from all the neighbors' yards to honor my mother's infidelity. She holds a cigarette to her lips in the last photograph of her before the accident. Every week, I take one cigarette from the pack and smoke it in homage to all women who try so hard to be good until they can't. The path backward is made of quicksand and the heavy breath of horses. My mother's lover is back there, a mosaic of other people's stories. It is hard to distinguish each element. Locust blossoms falling from high branches, a full ashtray on the kitchen table, the smell of hard rain, posture of a woman ready to step from one life into another. I was small when I got lost in a pasture, somewhere close to home yet unrecognizable. I try to calm this memory of horses and grasses as I surveyed the trail. I hear my parents fighting in the distance. The heart of a larger animal beats in my small chest. You can see my dead mother in the language of my hands. Here the grass is wet with spittle bugs and dew. A pasture with 3 horses, very early in the past. I wonder if she felt heard or only seen in a certain light. I wonder if she wanted in or wanted out. At the end of the backward path, there are sparks and shards and an accordion of steel. The shadow of the locust tree breathes. The surface of the lake breathes in the darkness. Sheets on the empty bed. The mourning dove resting on the pavement. Sand on the backward path breathes. The bramble at the edge of the pasture breathes. The dog anxious at the door of the past. Snow at the scene of the accident. The child I was, asleep in the wreckage, was breathing. But my mother, the other woman of a stranger, ceased. Drive home. From the passenger side window, I spot a bald eagle shifting in high bare branches above stiff brown fields. We are trying not to talk about the family or the past. Sky finally clear after weeks suspended between rain and snow. I see an old brick house in the rearview mirror, a half-finished renovation with torn blue tarps thrashing in the wind. A year before he died, our father took us to an aviary where an injured bald eagle was brought to recover and sat flightless for years in a glass enclosure. What does it mean to be rescued? Let's pretend this isn't a memory or a cage or a house cold with sadness. An eagle can live 20 years longer in captivity than in the wild. In one version of my life, no one left the house and nothing happened to us. So everything happened within us, and it was just as bad. This is a sister's poem called Close. When people say, like a sister, they mean something unlike a sister, I think, because there is nothing like a sister. Not even a brother, not even a lightning storm after a drought, not a stone wall crowded in Queen Anne's lace. Look for the small purple fleck in the center. It isn't always there, but when it is, it focuses the grace. So much of what we lost was held in the same hands. So much of what we haven't said, we don't need to. Though sometimes our omissions fall through the strata like acid rain. I don't know what happened in your family, but in my family, it felt like the world was split over and over, and all that was left were sisters. So what is the antonym of loss? That's the question that the poems in this collection, and maybe all my poems, are writing toward. And I think some of what the antonym to loss is a deepening of connections, like what we're all feeling here today. And the deepening also of the connection to the self, which is what I believe poetry is for, the writing for me. So I want to read a coming out poem called Coming Out. I knew when the small plane I was riding touched down in the fog. I knew, watching my stepmother's hands working the rock garden behind the house. I didn't want the circle to close. I couldn't see myself in the dress, so shaven. I knew because I loved to move through water, the way it yielded, the way it took me in its mouth. I knew watching our hound Mutt when he slipped out of the leash, the joy he had escaping. I just wanted to sleep in the wild strawberries with my chopped off hair. And then I would like to read the poem that is the same as the title of the book, Loss and its Antonym. The opposite of losing you was watching you across the purple light of the dance floor in the local gay bar while the salt trucks dragged through the streets. We had our people back then. Janet all night at the pool table, and Kevin by the men's room, a little drunk and smearing his mascara, and our song, an anthem for falling hard into each other's lives. That winter, we proved that being terrified doesn't prevent you from being happy. Even when the guy on Church Street threw a bottle at us and called us dykes on our way back to my place, where we ate ice cream out of the carton at 2 a.m., drunk on our bodies, and the snowstorm, and a conversation I can't remember, but we're still having it. I want to learn to write about the loves that haven't died. Yellowed paperbacks with broken spines. The stillness of the lake from the fishing pier on winter mornings. The people in this small city I sometimes recognize on the sidewalk a decade after our bar shut down. Well, I know that we've gone over, so I'm just going to read one more small poem that is not in this collection that came out since. And it's called Long Love. Blur of years stirs in the room on a bright February morning. I have studied your face for 10,000 days. Long shadows across the untouched snow, your winter split fingertips against my spine. Tone color of your voice that has said my name more than any other. Ragged with grief, hoarse with desire, warm tenor of dailiness. When our love was illegal and we were young, we promised not to promise, didn't we? Didn't we say we'd just begin again? Thank you so much.
Alison Prine, will you please come and read on our Poetry Pride Parade in June as well? You please come back.
Sure.
Okay. Um, Anybody who knows me, you can see why I absolutely um am taken by the intimacy of these poems. They are just extraordinary. And I honestly just my experience of reading your book, I can't imagine Mary Miriam reading your manuscript and like what it must have felt like, when she realized like, oh my gosh, this is the manuscript. This is it. This is what's gonna win the Sappho Prize. Like, yep. Well, actually I can because I feel like I would have done the same thing. The again, the book is loss in its antonym, and I'm gonna take I think your last poem really said it all. I mean, more than the Beatles, more than, it's love, right? It's love. Like love is the thing that we're gonna come back to, no matter what, no matter what. And as hard as it is, as hard as it is. And your poems just really speak to the whole breadth of that experience. Thank you so, so much, Alison. And I'll look forward to seeing you in June now. Not to put you on the spot. You can back out.
No.
I hope you won't, but folks, thank you for staying with us. I mean, of course, you wouldn't want to leave for a moment of this reading behind. Would, here we are, like, why shouldn't we celebrate like International Women's Day? Like, why not go over for that? I mean, hello, if we're gonna go over for anything. And I just want to say thank you once again to our four readers, Kashiana Singh, Koch O'Neill, McCullagh, and Megha Sood, and Alison Prine. And would folks just unmute for a moment and show your deep appreciation for this fiercely intimate, beautiful, extraordinary feast of poetry that we've been able to experience today.
Brava, brava, brava.
There it is. There it is.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Folks, just a couple program notes to close out as we always do. I want to remind you, next week we will not be here, oddly. It's because in 2 weeks we'll be here. I hope all of you will come back and bring a poem. We are celebrating our 5th year anniversary on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. It'll be March 23rd, Sunday, March 23rd. And it'll be our send-off to our in-person 5th anniversary celebration at the Associated Writing Programs conference, excuse me. It's gonna feel like a concert though. We are co-hosting an off-site event called Off-Site on Purpose with Swim Every Day, Mom Egg Review, Perugia Press, and Whale Road Review. And we've been invited to join, and we have 6 beautiful, beautiful poets from Cultivating Voices will be reading, representing all of us. Cara Briggs is here today. Tamara J. Madison. You know what? I'm so taken by like the whole reading today. I know I've been like oh, I know, I've got it right here. Here it is. It's a pre-program. Nobody's seen it except you now have seen it. It's not even out yet. Yes, we will be hearing from, representing us at Cultivating Voices Live Poetry will be Risa Denenberg of Headmistress Press, Tanya Kohong, Tamara J. Madison, Yeva Johnson was in the room, I think, a little earlier, and Tweety and Cara Briggs. So if you're at AWP, that's going to be Thursday night, March 27th. So again, come for our online celebration as our send-off to, send all the love to the 6 readers that will be reading in person in LA. And of course, April's Poetry Month, everybody. We have an incredible, incredible month of poetry for you during National Poetry Month, which is really International Poetry Month because many, many countries celebrate Poetry Month in April. So 2 weeks from now, bring your poems to help us celebrate 5 years of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And thank you for being here today to celebrate poetry. It was, I could barely talk about it, honestly. I could barely talk about it. And I was trying to get myself ready for it, and I never can. Everybody, have a really great week. Take, as I always say, take really good care of yourselves. Take extraordinary care of your beloveds. And keep writing. Keep writing. Keep writing your fierce, fierce poems. We need them now more than ever. I'm Sandy Yannone for Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace out, my friends. Thank you.